What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Who Gives a Dram. 38 episodes in. Before we get into the episode, though, let's take care of a little bit of business. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, you guys, make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're listening on. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean. I don't know why I always think of Podbean first. Buzzsprout, Stitcher, Breaker, Overcast, Google Podcasts, Pandora. I'm sure there's a bunch of other podcast platforms out there. If you're listening to Who Gives a Dram, you guys, make sure you're subscribed. And also, if you're watching the YouTube videos, you guys, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well, all right? Hit the like button on YouTube, leave a comment, leave a rating on iTunes. Do anything to engage with the podcast. It does help us out quite a bit. Helps us out in the algorithm of getting our podcast to the top of the charts, to the top of the iTunes charts there. We want to be the new goal. We want to be the number one podcast in the world next week. So let's make that happen, you guys. Also, if you're not following on Instagram, at Who Gives a Dram, Facebook, TikTok, all Who Gives a Dram. And that's about it. If you guys want to check out my official Who Gives a Dram glassware, well, not official glassware, just my favorite glassware on the market, just go to snootglass.com. www.snootglass.com. If you guys are going to make a purchase on there, use my promo code WG8020 at checkout. You get 20% off your entire order. You're saving money, getting some good whiskey glasses. It's a win-win. Also, you guys, this podcast is presented by The Grapevine Media. Go check out www.thegrapevinemedia.com. Follow us on all socials, The Grapevine Media. We're doing a great job over there, so go check that out as well. And that's all the business, I think. Yeah, well, that's all the business. We'll think of something else now. So I'm going to come off storming out of the gates, you guys. I'm just going to be completely real with y'all. I already recorded like half of a podcast for this. We're doing WOODFORD Reserve today, by the way, if you're just listening to the podcast. I came out of the gates storming with this podcast today on this episode because I've already done like a half of another episode. And, dude, I was putting myself to sleep with how boring I was. I don't know what was wrong with me, but it was the worst 15 minutes worth of content I've ever put out in my entire life. And I've put out hundreds of hours of podcasting, of podcasts, content, several episodes on several different podcasts in my time. And I was so bored, and I was just, my eyes were closing as I was talking. So I stopped it, and I said, you know what? I need to go take a break. I need to get my mind off of podcasting for a little bit, off of whiskey, so I can come in fresh. I can come in ready to go. And that's exactly what we're doing today. I was on YouTube just searching some of my favorite podcasters, just searching, getting in the mood. And I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm putting on the camera. We're going live. Let's do this. So that's where we're at right now. We're going live. It's another week here on Who Gives a Dram. We're on episode 38 of Who Gives a Dram. 38 episodes in, 38 different whiskey reviews we've done. And today's the Curt Schilling episode because he was number 38 for the Red Sox. All-time pitcher on the Red Sox, by the way. One of the best Red Sox pitchers in history. Yeah, you can't make an argument for the best because Pedro Martinez is probably the best pitcher in Red Sox history. And if Chris Sale gets healthy again, he's a stud as well. However, he's up there. The Bloody Sock game, 2004 ALCS, was an all-time classic. And I think he's like, is he in politics now, or is he, I don't know. I think he got in trouble for something. Who knows? Everyone's getting in trouble for everything these days. I'm probably going to get in trouble because I said I want to be the number one podcast in the world. I do want to be the number one podcast in the world, though. I wonder how, I was actually reading an article this week about how many podcast downloads Joe Rogan gets, because I want to see where I'm at compared to him. And he came out and said, he got, I don't want to misquote, and I'm not going to try to find the article right now. Was it 8 million downloads an episode? I think. 8 million downloads an episode. And that's not including the YouTube, which is millions more, and the clips, which are millions more. Who knows how many it's usually is. Man. 8 million downloads. It's a lot of downloads. It's a lot of people downloading an episode. But that's why Joe Rogan's where he is where he's at. We should try to get Joe Rogan on the podcast. That'd be a fun one. We'd have to do Buffalo Trace though, because that's all he drinks. He was drinking Buffalo Trace with Elon Musk, I think. No. I know he was. And I think he's sponsored by Buffalo Trace or something. Buffalo Trace, man. If you want to sponsor Who Gives a Dram, be my guest. But anyways, yeah. So I was comparing my downloads with Joe Rogan. I couldn't believe the number, and I was just it's inspiring. It's like, Joe Rogan is an all-time entertainer. He's a great stand-up comedian. He's kind of an overrated UFC announcer, and I mean that with all due respect, because he's definitely going to listen to this episode. Because Joe Rogan announces the UFC. He announces the UFC like your drunk friend who kind of watches fighting, but doesn't watch enough to truly understand it. And I mean that with all due respect to Joe Rogan. I mean that with all due respect. He could kick my ass. But he will say, "Oh, he's hurt. Oh, he's hurt." And the guy will land a jab. Or he say, "Oh, he rocked him with that head kick," and then that guy hits the other guy with a spinning heel kick to the jaw. And it's like, wow. Joe Rogan, where was that? I remember he always says it with the Conor McGregor fights. He always does it with these big fights. He says, "Oh, he's hurt. Oh, he's hurt." And then Khabib will land a takedown. Or then Daniel Cormier will land a huge right hand. And it's just like, Joe, what fight are you watching, dude? You're making me nervous over here. You get the next UFC pay-per-view you guys watch. Listen to Joe Rogan. Seriously. He he is so over the top with what he's seeing, and I feel like it's in the moment, so it must be one of the hardest jobs to do because you're talking in the moment watching a fight, and you have to have your content brain on the entire time because you can't fill it, you can't have dead space. So that's a long time to do it, but still, a guy will land a good overhand right, and Joe Rogan will say, "Oh no, he's out on his feet. He's out on his feet." And then the guy will land a spinning heel kick to the face. I think that's actually happened before. And then and then they all go crazy. And anyways, Joe Rogan can come on the podcast if he wants. We're doing Woodford Reserve today, you guys. I wanted to come into this podcast. I'm recording this on August 1st. I wanted to come into this podcast on this first month of the shittiest month of the year. And I just wanted something that was going to be all reliable, that was going to be, just a solid bourbon to start this absolutely terrible month. The worst month out of the 12, and it's not even close. Give me February 10 times out of 10 opposed to August. So I was going through up and down my whiskey, what I have available for whiskeys, between myself and the two official Who Gives a Dram scouts, which are my brother and my dad. They find whiskey for me. And I was going through what we have between the three of us. And I just kind of, I woke up this morning and I knew I was going to record, and I still had no idea what I was going to do. And I didn't even know up until at this point, probably 2 hours ago. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I just looked at Woodford Reserve, and, I've had this. It's empty, just about. We have another pour or two left in there. So I figured, you know what? I got to pick up another bottle anyway. Let's get this drank. Let's get this gone. Fill it up with a new bottle. Get a new bottle in here into Who Gives a Dram Studios. I've had this particular bottle for a very long time, for well over a year. So there's been air filtering in and out of here. It's been empty. It's been about 3/4 empty for a while now. Since I started getting a lot of bourbon, I kind of put Woodford to the side because it's Woodford. It's great, but it's not something you reach for if you have better bottles. But when I first got this, I really enjoyed it. It was never my go-to. It was never my favorite. I remember always getting a very strong oak flavor on this in the past, and we'll see what I get today. I'm going to pour this in right now. bad cork pop because it's empty. We're just going to do a little bit. Let that rest in the snoot glass for a second. So, yeah. What else is going on? How was everybody's week? How was everybody's week this week? I didn't buy any bottles. You ever go through a time, for those who like collecting bourbon like myself, you ever go through a time where you kind of like look at yourself in the mirror and it's like, dude, you got to stop buying whiskey. I did that this week because when you have like rent to pay and a truck to pay for and all these bills, you got to like prioritize. Yes, you got to budget. That's my point. Budgeting's important. If you didn't know, budgeting is an important thing to do. But I'm going to take a break with purchasing bottles for a little bit. I'm going to take a break of going out. It's tough for me to go to a liquor store and not buy a bottle of bourbon if there's something I like. For example, when I bought a few weeks ago, when I bought the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C919 and B520, it's like if I go into a liquor store and I see those, I'm not gonna not buy them. I can't control myself, so that can get kind of tough with going into a liquor store and seeing, like, if I saw a Colonel E.H. Taylor or something I can't find a whole lot of, like, I'm gonna buy it. So in that respect, I got to keep out of liquor stores. But I'm kind of joking because a lot of the times I go into liquor stores and I don't even buy anything. But I'm almost afraid to find something that I want to buy. Because, you got to budget. You got to budget money, and, whiskey's kind of in the budget, but it doesn't take precedence over other things that are more important to surviving. So I am taking a few weeks off from buying any bottles. If you guys have any bottles or samples you want to send me to do on the podcast, feel more than free to send me whatever you want. Hit me up on Instagram or shoot me an email, whogivesdram@gmail.com. And I would be more than happy to review any whiskeys that you guys send my way. I'll drink anything. As long as it's a whiskey, I'll drink it. And I'll give it an honest review. So Woodford Reserve, this is just the normal distiller select. Goes for around $35. You can find it cheaper than there in a lot of spots. You can find it more expensive, upwards of $40 in a lot of spots as well. This is 45.2% alcohol by volume, 90.4 proof. Master Distiller Chris Morris. Woodford Reserve is one of the oldest and smallest distilleries in Kentucky. It first started distilling whiskey in 1812. It has since been purchased by Brown-Forman. It is a blend of whiskeys. It's distilled, and it goes through both column stills and pot stills, and then it's aged for 7 years. I think it's a blend of 7-year whiskeys in obviously new charred American oak barrels, as all bourbon must be. This mash bill is very interesting. It's 72% corn, 18% malted barley, and 10% rye. I think I got that right. Let me check that real quick. It's in the low 70s with corn. That's all I know, and that is a lot of corn for a bourbon. 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley. So I had the rye and malted barley mixed up. 72% corn is a lot of corn. So right off the bat, I would expect this. If I've never drank this before, I would expect it to be very sweet. Corn is a very sweet grain, and in order to be classified as a bourbon, you must be 51% corn, which is why most bourbons are affiliated with a vanilla, honey, fruity type of palate to them, because corn is sweet in nature. That's why mellow corn, being a straight corn whiskey, that's why I thought it tasted like a bowl of cereal, like a bowl of Frosted Flakes. I think I said it's very sweet in nature. So I would expect this to be very sweet right off the bat. Now, like I said, I got oak off of this the first time in the past, but that was also not. I mean, this bottle has gotten significantly older since then. So we'll see what we get this time around. I'm kind of curious. Woodford Reserve, just a classic Kentucky bourbon. Right off the bat, I got to get past the alcohol first. Giving it some swirly poos in the snoot glass here. Chris Morris is the master distiller, and Elizabeth McCall is the assistant master distiller. Both very, hold prestigious rankings within the whiskey community. Both very well known for what they do. Let's see here. This is all filtered with limestone water that runs underneath the distillery, obviously, which is in Kentucky. I'm not sure what exact town it's in. It is fermented for up to, I think, 7 days, which is one of the longest times in the whiskey industry. I'm not sure what the average is, but the last time I read, the Woodford Reserve yeast strain, or the mash bill, is fermented in, I think it's cypress, I don't know the word, cypress pots for 7 days, which is one of the longest times in the whiskey industry. It's paired with their unique yeast strain. Most whiskey companies have patented yeast strains that they use to kind of keep consistency within their whiskeys. Like I said before, the perfectly balanced flavor of Woodford Reserve comes from a careful batching process of whiskey distilled in pot stills and whiskey distilled in column stills. No other whiskey can boast such a flavor combination. Now, that might just be a selling point. Don't know about that. This is all coming from the Woodford Reserve website, by the way. We mature Woodford Reserve in new charred white oak barrels of our own making. The process is a key ingredient in our. The barrel is a key ingredient in our process, contributing flavor, complexity, and balance. That's why we craft, toast, and char bourbon barrels at our very own cooperage. After filling, barrels age in our unique heat-cycled warehouses until mature. That's another fun fact about Woodford Reserve. You'll see a lot of whiskey companies boast of their natural warehouses where they're exposed to the elements, where they're exposed to extreme heats, extreme cold, rain, snow, sleet, tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, asteroids, dogs coming by and peeing on the bottom ones. You'll see whiskey companies promote that. For example, that's usually the Colonel E.H. Taylor annual releases that are impossible to get. They are, like, this year's is Warehouse C, and I think Warehouse C was flooded out, or it had an unusual weather circumstance, and they're bottling and selling the bottles from that particular warehouse as their annual kind of limited release. Colonel E.H. Taylor Warehouse C. And most whiskey companies honestly promote that, and they expand on that impact that weather has. Another good example is Jefferson's Ocean. Jefferson's Ocean makes voyages around the world, by sea. They're aging in a ship, in barrels, in new charred oak barrels, for the entire duration of their aging. I don't know how long they're aging for, but for the entire duration, or at least part of the duration, they are at sea, flopping and flooping around, and that obviously creates a distinct taste that Jefferson's Ocean has. Woodford Reserve, on the other hand, has a heat or a climate-controlled warehouse, and I don't know what other distilleries do this. Woodford Reserve is probably the biggest one, and this is, again, to keep a consistency with flavors, to keep a consistency within the flavor profiles of Woodford Reserve and their other variants of what they release. And so you lose that creativity you could get with exposing the barrels to the elements, i.e., Colonel E.H. Taylor. However, it does work in this case, as Woodford Reserve is one of the highest selling bourbons in the world, to keep that flavor profile consistent with what we know it as. So it is one of the only distilleries that utilizes a climate-controlled warehouse. I thought that was kind of cool. I think one of the coolest things about whiskey is how it's aged. Obviously, you go through the fermentation and the distilling. That is all very. That's a really cool process in itself. But when you have that white dog in the barrel and then it's aging for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. It's cool how that happens, in my opinion. It's cool how, I picture in my head of just an open, like an old barn almost, with whiskey in it and sunlight's hitting it, rain's hitting it, some snow's getting into the doors, affecting the outside barrels in the wintertime. It's just a cool thought. It's a cool picture in my head, and that's always been one of the most interesting aspects of whiskey to me, is the fact that it is aged in those barrels, and the fact that it can go from anywhere between, what's the lowest, probably a year, to Pappy 23 years, and some scotches are 25 years, 30 years, 35 years. So I don't know how that's going to affect the taste of this. I don't know how that climate-controlled warehouse is going to affect the taste. But going right into the smell, to start off, I get a... Right off the bat, I get like a syrupy, like a maple syrup, like that deep, dark sweetness to it. It smells like bourbon. That's what it smells like. Maybe a little bit of citrusy fruit, like an orange, or like a plump, juicy fruit like that. On the nose, I'm not getting a whole lot of oak. It's present, but it's not it's not the main sense that I got in the past. And I do have the tasting notes pulled up that we will review after, straight from the whiskey, or from Woodford Reserve's website. But yeah, it's a very pleasant, inviting nose. For me, I'm getting that kind of maple syrup with a hint of citrus in it. A little bit of spice. A little bit of spices in there. A little bit of pepper. There's something else in there, though. There's something there, and I can't put my nose on it. There's definitely something there that is unique. And I don't know what it is. It almost smells like a piece of gum, almost. If that might not make any sense. But it's got like I smell it and my senses become cooler, like when you chew a piece of mint gum. Maybe that's mint that I'm smelling. But overarching is to me a maple syrup sweetness type of, maybe like honey-ish. There's definitely spices. I would say pepper and cinnamon are on the forefront. Not a whole lot of oak, and a little bit of citrus as well. Oranges and apples are the first ones that are coming to my mind. I guess we can look at the smells before we get into the tasting. I don't want to look at the tasting notes though. Nose. Here's coming from the Woodford Reserve website. Heavy with rich dried fruits, hints of mint and oranges covered with a dusting of cocoa, faint vanilla and tobacco spice. I swear to God, I didn't even read the website. I quickly saw that they had a tasting notes section, and I kept my laptop on the site so we could do it. So heavy with rich dried fruits. So I'm not getting the dried fruits, but hints of mint and oranges. So there's the citrus and there's that like gum mint smell that I'm getting. Oh. Proud of myself. I'm proud of myself. With a dusting of cocoa. That's like if you had mint gum, if you had 5 gum and oranges on a platter, you get Salt Bae in here. You got the cocoa, and he just sprinkles it on the mint and the oranges, and you muddle it all up. Put a little bit of to me, a little bit of like pepper, like a flick of pepper. Then that's what this smells like. They're saying faint vanilla and tobacco spice. I think the spice that I'm getting is more like a peppery spice. But there's the nose for Woodford Reserve. It smells great. It smells inviting. It smells like something that's gonna give you that Kentucky hug. Just a classic bourbon smell. A bit spicier than I remember. But let's get into the taste. You guys, cheers. Thank you for tuning in to another week of Who Gives a Dram. Okay, the oak's a bit more present on the taste. First sip, there's that Kentucky hug staying in the throat a bit. First sip, I'm getting some oak. I'm getting that spice a bit more pronounced. I'm not getting as much sweetness. Oak is the main thing that's coming forward. That peppery. It's more cinnamon on the taste. Cinnamon, oak. Not really a lot of sweetness in there. And it's honestly it's light to me. This is 90.4 proof. It's a light whiskey. There's not much to it. I mean, we're coming off a few weeks of barrel proof whiskeys here on the podcast, and this is just a little bit lighter compared to those guys. This is something that probably more towards a beginner's palate would be able to. This might be curtailed to someone getting into bourbon. Again, I can see this being like a daily sipper for a lot of people because there is a lot going on in the taste and in the nose as well. There's a lot going on with the nose and the palate, and with kind of the senses that I'm getting at least with this bottle of Woodford. It might have something to do with the fact that a lot of air has been circulating through it. There's not a lot of whiskey left in this bottle, and that could affect the notes that I'm getting. But that second sip, I actually get a little bit more of that tobacco spice on the taste. That fruitiness is gone on the taste. I'm getting oak and spice, maybe a hint of vanilla, not much more. The nose I feel is a bit more complex than the taste. It's a very thin mouthfeel. I feel like it's very. It doesn't taste heavy. It doesn't sit heavy in your mouth. The finish isn't too long, but it's just enough to give you that Kentucky hug. The Kentucky hug. Taste, according to the website, rich, chewy, rounded and smooth with complex citrus, cinnamon, and cocoa. Toffee, caramel, chocolate, and spice notes abound. Rich, chewy, rounded, and smooth with complex citrus. I don't get that citrus. I'll try it again. I guess I'll take another sip of whiskey and try it again. Yeah, no, I don't get that citrus at all. I get the cinnamon. cocoa, I guess. I mean, I get a little bit of vanilla in there. Caramel, I can see. Not a lot of chocolate. But the spice notes, yes, definitely that spice. Maybe a tobacco spice. Maybe a bit of a baking spice. Baking/rye spice. I would say, though, that it's not as complex as the nose. However, it is very good for a lower proofed, kind of just nationally available bourbon. Woodford has a reputation, has a solid reputation, and this is why. It's because, they've won several awards. They're nationally recognized as a top-tier bourbon brand. And for that, you need to be consistent, and you need to have a consistently good flavor. And that's what this has. So with Woodford, I don't know if it'd be something... that I'd go with every single day. I do enjoy it. I would reach for it if someone offered it to me. I can see this being a daily sipper in some cases. A whiskey that you can have kind of consistently and not be overpowered by it. With that being said, I'm gonna give Woodford Reserve an 8.3 on the Who Gives a Dram scale. I'm gonna rebuy this bottle once I run out. We have a lot of Woodford variants and varietals that we need to do here on the podcast that we're gonna do. But this, the namesake, the highlight, the number one Woodford Reserve here, just the straight bourbon whiskey, 8.3. It's definitely more complex than a lot of bourbons with it on its proof point, but it's just a little light. It's not hitting the exact taste notes that I love. I love a sweeter bourbon, especially coming down to this price point or this proof point. And I'm getting a bit more of a spicy note to it on the taste. On the nose, I quite enjoy it. On the taste, not as much, but I do thoroughly still. I mean, I'm gonna drink it. So, 8.3. For $30 to $35, I think this is something you should definitely have on your whiskey shelf. I would not say otherwise. You got to have Woodford on your shelf. It's just it's a staple. It's a classic, and I'm excited to do the other Woodford Reserve, the other collections that they have under the Woodford Reserve name, because this is a solid bourbon. And I can only imagine what the other ones are like. I've only had a few other Woodfords in my day. I don't own any more, but that'll hopefully change soon. But anyways, you guys, that does it for me here this week. I really appreciate you guys tuning into the podcast. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed on all podcast platforms. Tell a friend about Who Gives a Dram. And if you guys enjoy the show, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Leave a like on there. Rate and review on iTunes. You guys, these are all things that help out the podcast. And again, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Who Gives a Dram. Follow us on there and just stay aboard this ride. Stay aboard this crazy whiskey ride that we're on. So Nick Bossy's going to play us out What Happened to Country, available to stream on all platforms. And you guys, always remember, whiskey is the water of life. So let's start living.
My hands are tired from paying my bills, staring at a bottle, I'm aiming to kill. Weeks passing by and the seasons keep changing. I'm playing my song, trying to make me a name. People say as they walk out the bar, the kid's gone places, maybe even a star. They don't play country down in Nashville today, just the same chord progression with nothing to say. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. They use auto-tune now down on Music Row, 'cause true country died there a long time ago. No, they don't play Waylon on the boulevard, but they'll do anything to be rock stars. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. But I do believe there is hope for us yet, 'cause there's millions of people who cannot forget the way Johnny Cash brought a tear to their eyes, or how Marty Robbins painted Texas skies. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. A grown man cry. A grown man cry. I won't let country die.